He was based in Puri, and he had thousands of disciples, many of whom were sannyasis, although he was grahastha because he was so qualified. There's a long story about how Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya became so qualified. And when he, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, wanted to show his, well, you know the story, I'll just a little bit. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu entered the Jagannath Puri temple, what happened? In a swoon of ecstasy, he fell on the ground unconscious. And the guards thought, this guy's crazy, toss him out. So they started to toss him out. But as they were doing that, who would come into the Jagannath temple but Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who said, no, don't throw him out. Carefully carry him to my home. I'll look after him. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, being a very great scholar, he knew how to test to see if he was faking. The test was to see if his breathing was in fact suspended, or was his breathing just normal and he was pretending to be in a state of trance. So he put little strands of cotton fiber in front of his nostrils and they didn't move, which meant he was either dead or he was in a trance. He wasn't dead. So he became convinced that he wasn't faking. Another controller in our midst. Okay, so when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu didn't come to external consciousness, he wasn't sure what to do. He tried this and tried that, nothing worked. So what finally worked was Lord Nityananda and the other devotees came and they loudly chanted, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama. And he came to external consciousness. Looked around, where am I? What's going on? Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya did a little discussion. You're very young, you're very attractive, you're very beautiful. How are you going to maintain your vows of sannyas unless you have thoroughly studied Vedanta Sutra? If you like, I can train you. I know how to do it. So that 7 days, nothing happened. 8th day, Lord Chaitanya explained Vedanta Sutra in such a way that Sarvabhauma said, he's super scholar. I've never heard anything like this before. It's wonderful. And as you're speaking, I can understand you're not just a young sannyasi. You're the personality of Godhead. Lord Chaitanya smiled and showed this Sadbhuja form. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya prostrated himself before Lord Chaitanya and became his devotee. So these Sadbhuja means 6, and 6-arm form, 2, 2, and 2 make 6. As Lord Chaitanya has done to Kamandalu, as Ram, his bow, and an arrow, and Krishna his flute. He took 2 hands to play his flute. The reason for showing the Sadbhuja form has to do with a nice discussion that is found in Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela, chapter 1, where one of the topics in this section is Balaram, and the Balaram is identified as the Adi Guru first direct manifestation or expansion of Krishna is the original spiritual master. And the purpose of introducing Balaram here is because the author, Krishnadas Kaviraj, wants to equate Balaram with Lord Nityananda. So as Balaram is the Akhanda Guru Tattva, or complete and undivided principle of Guru, so also is Lord Nityananda, being non-different than Balaram. And similarly, in Ram's Leela, that's Lakshmana. He's also the Adi Guru personality. And but it's not, the Sri Vaishnava Acharyas have commented so thoroughly, extensively, exhaustively on Ramayana. They're not tuned into Chaitanya Charitamrita and the picture that Chaitanya Charitamrita has of who is Balaram and who is Lord Nityananda, but they certainly understand Lakshmana as Guru. And as Guru, Guru function described in that section of Chaitanya Charitamrita is that he reveals the absolute truth, and the absolute truth being the Supreme Person. So Balaram reveals Krishna. He does other things, but he gives Krishna and reveals Krishna. That's the Guru function. Lord Nityananda similarly, and Lakshman similarly. So we'll hear something about his position as Adi Guru. So here's a nice B.G. Sharma painting. They're entering into the Dandak forest. Sita's in the middle. Lakshman is there to assist Ram, which includes giving protection to Sita. When Lakshman was born, Vishishta, the priest of the royal family, gave him his name. Lakshmana, because of his Lakshmi Sampanna, or he was enriched with the service mood. Nice painting. There's Sita Ram, and Lakshmana is doing this and that and the other service for Sita and Ram. And everything was in this rich mood of service unto Lord Ramachandra. We'll hear something more tomorrow, the Sheshatvam topic, but we're not going to go into it so much right now. Here's a passage from Vedanta Deshika's writing, Paduka Sahasram. What's that? Vedanta Deshika wrote 1,000 verses glorifying the Padukas of Ramachandra. There's some devotees I know, ISKCON devotees. It's one of their favorite literatures. It's because it's so poetic and so sweet, and the glorifications of Ramachandra. And they've given classes and seminars and exhaustive description. So I got this from one of them. Verse 18.1, Sri Ramanuja's definition in Vedanta Sangraha is, he or it is a Shesha who, by his or its very nature, exists to promote the glory of another. And the other is Sheshi. So that's Lakshman. He's in this mood of Shesha, just giving service and wanting to glorify and nothing else. One of the things, there's a very interesting detail where Ramachandra is building, Ramachandra requests in Chitrakoot, he requests Lakshman to build a cottage. There's supposed to be, if you at some point in time you receive a document where sometime after Lakshman volunteered, or more than volunteered, he insisted on coming with Ramachandra. He said, I'll take care of all your needs. They didn't explicitly speak in terms that was false ego terms, but Ramchandra corrected him later. You can read in the document how very discreetly and gently he corrected him later. He said, Ramchandra said, please build a cottage that serves your needs, Sita's needs, and my needs. And Lakshman got it. He said, I'm here just to serve your needs. And if your needs are Sita's needs, I'm here to serve your needs. Please don't give my needs any consideration. It was a very, the Sri Vaishnava Acharyas focus on the language of what he spoke and the language of how Ramachandra corrected him. It was not done at the moment. It was done later. It was done very gently and very discreetly and even a little subtly. But because they're elevated personalities, they could understand. Lakshman could understand he was being corrected, and he accepted the correction. So you'll get a document that explains all of that. And it's just extracts from commentaries of the Acharyas. That's the lesson. So he built, according to Ram's indication, what direction, etc., etc. While they're in Chitrakoot, Lakshman is speaking about Bharata and Bharata's austerities. And it's subtle, but indirectly he's indicating Ram is in the forest and there's demons in the forest, and don't neglect taking care of the demons because he's the boss, and Lakshman is there to serve the supreme, the Shesha and Sheshi. Ram appreciated his mood very, very much, and he complimented his mood, glorified his mood, saying, I'm so much missing the fatherly affection of Dasarath, but your care is not just as a servant of me, but you're taking care of me like a father takes care of a son. So my feelings of separation from Dasarath are somewhat diminished because of your all this wonderful service that you're doing. After some time, they go further into the Dandak forest and they have this little encounter. What's her name? Shurpanakha. Who is Shurpanakha? Shurpanakha is the third of four children. The oldest of the four children was Ravana. And then Kumbhakarna. And so she had the capacity to make herself look a little more beautiful than she would normally look. And in a very low-class way, she went right up to Ramachandra and said, oh, handsome one. I mean, this artist has him with a beard and stuff like that, but anyway. Oh, handsome one, become my lover. I have mystic powers. I can take you to this place, that place, and the other place, and we can enjoy together. Woo, woo, woo. You know, she was very direct. So what did Ramachandra do? He directed her to Lakshman. And the language from Ramayana is this. Enam bhaja Vishalakshi Bhartaram Brataram Mama. He's indicating that you're not to approach me directly. You can approach the Guru first. That's Lakshmana. And what did Lakshmana, or the function of Guru, this is from our Sri Vaishnava Acharyas who are pointing out the language, the choice of words, and the understanding behind the choice of words. We did this very carefully in the morning class. We'll step back a little bit. In these histories, Itihasa, Ramayana is one, Mahabharata is another. There's a storyline, but there's also messages woven into the storyline, or the storyline reveals messages. And it takes a discerning person, like our acharyas are discerning persons, and they can understand what's the story, what's beside the storyline, what's the message, what's the lesson. So Lakshmana, being in the role of Guru, don't worship me, worship Ram. I mean, here's not what he said. He said, I'm not so qualified. See him, he's the qualified one. Take shelter of him. And what happened, what's going on here? Oh, I'm hitting the wrong button. That's what's going on. So she then steps away from Lakshman, and she wants Ram. And there's one thing standing in the way, Sita. So she lunges at Sita, and in a booming voice, so booming that the voice was so loud that it stopped her in her tracks. And he ordered Lakshman, stop her. He didn't say how to, but that's the master telling the disciple or student or the guru, stop her. So he right away drew his very sharp sword. This one shows a little skinny knife, but very sharp. And he cut off her nose and cut off her ears. Disfigured Shurpanakha. Commentators have some comment about that. This is three points. A guru's function. Remove false shelters of an untrained soul. That's pretty harsh way. Cut off her nose and ears. But remove false shelters, because she was very proud of her beauty, but she wasn't very beautiful anyways. A guru steps in when an untrained soul harms the property of the Supreme Lord or other devotees. So Sita was about to be harmed, and a guru function was to give protection to those who are going to be harmed. That doesn't necessarily you have some strong arms and sharp sword, but it's a principle of protection. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did the same thing with Balabhadra Bhattacharya when the persons who took him away, he went right in their midst and brought back Balabhadra Bhattacharya, protected him forcibly. And the instruction given by Ram is the duty of the guru who's representing him. So Lakshman heard very, very clearly, stop her, and he did what he could do to stop her, and it worked. Lakshman said, when he spoke to Shurpanakha, fulfill your purpose by becoming my noble brother's younger wife. That's the words in Valmiki Ramayana. And sure enough, that's what happened. In her next life, Shurpanakha became Kubja. So Kubja didn't look deformed like Shurpanakha, but she was a hunchback, and she was in the service of a bad person, Kamsa. She had fragrances and ointments and so forth and so on, and she came to offer them to Krishna. So because her approach was that of service and not like Shurpanakha, as the painting shows, he accepted her service. He put the tips of his fingers underneath her chin. He put his foot on her toes and boop, straightened her up. And she became a very attractive young woman. And he said, later, I'll come and fulfill your desires. So that happened because she had that mood of service. Krishna accepted her service and he engaged with her in confidential affairs. Big change from Shurpanakha to Kubja, but a different approach. Now, we already heard the flip side about Sita's offense to Lakshmana, and that brought her a bunch of trouble. And here it is again. Sita totally ignored Lakshmana's caution. When she's pointing out to Ramchandra, oh, see the deer, and how beautiful, and this and that, and charming, and attracted. I want the deer. The Sri Vaishnavacharyas point out this is completely against the principle of Sita, meaning she wanted something for her own enjoyment, not something on behalf of Ramachandra. In other words, according to the commentators, she is acting like a conditioned soul or speaking like a conditioned soul, wanting to be a enjoyer of objects or things of this world outside of the happiness of Ramachandra. That's not Sita. Totally out of character. And because of that mistake, she underwent some problems. But the problems were amplified because she's ignoring him. And there's a whole other document you think you're supposed to receive. Her words. When Mricha called out, Ram went after the deer, chased the deer. He understood this is a trick, so he shot the deer. Mricha called out, Lakshman, Sita, help. And she heard. Lakshman heard. And Lakshman didn't move. And she's looking at him like, go help him. He needs your help. He's calling for us. He said, no, Ram told me to stay here. I'm the servant of Ram. He told me to stay here. Besides, it's just a trick. I don't trust it. And then so aside from ignoring his advice, who have seen a deer like that? There's no such deer that's rainbow colors and changes colors in his movements. This isn't a deer. This is a Rakshasa trick. And she just ignored him. Now she's going to vilify. And so there's a document that's right from Valmiki Ramayana, and she says very harsh things. Offense to Lakshman. So we talked about it. We've had a whole discussion about whatever you do, don't offend Lakshman. Dvidvida, same thing. Now here's Sita. So even if you're Sita, you're the goddess of fortune, don't mess. What to speak of us? So not in Valmiki Ramayana, but some of the other Ramayanas, when she threatened to take her life, then Lakshman complied. I'm going against the word of my master. That was a mistake. And with his bow, he did Lakshman Rekha. He made a circle and told her stay within the circle no matter what, and you'll be protected. You step outside the circle, and anything can happen. Sure enough, she stepped outside the circle, and it happened. Violating, offending, so she's now in difficulty. Then another function, very interesting dialogue, when Ram comes to know that Sita has been kidnapped, he searches and searches and searches and can't find Sita. He becomes very sorry or sorrowful. After the midday class, the document was circulated from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and Rupa Goswami's description of the sorrow that permeates Ramayana, and in this particular event in particular. So here's Lakshman. Do not lose heart. You must be bold and energetic. A resolute mind can conquer fate, but you must first conquer your weaknesses. Let us make a more thorough search in the forest instead of yielding to unavailing sorrow. Let us be manly and active. So this is a role reversal. Guru is advising master. Now, it's not totally inappropriate. There's a nice example of that happening where it was appropriate also, where Sanatana Goswami, at his first meeting with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Mahaprabhu came, and Nawab Hussain Shah was asking Sanatana, who is the sannyasi with tens of thousands of followers? So since Sanatana Goswami was a confidential servant of the king, he knew how he pacified the king, but anything could happen. He can do a complete switcheroo and turn against Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and try to harm him. So he gave him some advice, two advice, different, but the principle is similar. As much as I wanted you to come and you came, I'm now advising you don't remain, because the Nawab Hussain Shah is a wild man. He can do anything at any time. And he's a very dangerous person. So, best that you leave as soon as possible. And the second, to enter a holy place like Vrindavan, which is where you're headed, don't go with tens of thousands of followers. That's not how a renounced person will enter. Better you go alone or with one or two persons. And Mahaprabhu considered and accepted both of those pieces of advice. So here's Ramchandra receiving some advice from his beloved Lakshmana, the Shesha, the servant of Sheshi. And so sure enough, they began searching and searching and searching, and many things happened. They found Jatayu, and Jatayu said what Jatayu said, and he left his body, Jatayu, as in Ramchandra's arms, and so many things happened. He indicated the direction that Ravana had gone in, so they followed that direction, the southerly direction. Many things happened after that, and after that, and after that, and eventually they meet Hanuman. Hanuman is sent as a minister to check out who these two mendicants with bow and arrow and weapons and swords, what are they doing in the forest? Are they friend or foe? So his very capable minister, Hanuman, was sent. And when Hanuman saw Ramachandra, he immediately, just intuitively understood it's not only friend instead of foe, he's the supreme person, because Hanuman's a great devotee. So before being even asked, Hanuman revealed his identity, who he was, what his name was, who his father was, who he's the servant of. Sugriva and what he was doing, why Sugriva is in difficulty, and we're living up on top of that Rishamukh hill. He sent me to see if you're friend or foe. Did everything transparent. And after Hanuman spoke so eloquently, Ram didn't respond to Hanuman. This is the guru function. Ram responded to Lakshman. And there's details and details of how he complimented the elegant speech, the perfect diction, this flawless Sanskrit, the even demeanor, the calmness, the whole presence of Hanuman tells me he's a great personality that's highly trained and highly qualified. He says all this to Lakshman. So then Ram, asked Lakshman to respond to the inquiry of Hanuman, like, who are they? And Lakshman explained everything. They're in the forest looking for Sita, etc., etc. And they had an encounter with Kabanda, who said, it gave his advice, make friendship with Sugriva. So we're searching for Sugriva, but lo and behold, you're the servant of Sugriva. What providential arrangement. This is wonderful. So Lakshman speak like this. We are searching and searching. Where is Sita? Where is Sita? So Hanuman then takes them to where Sugriva is. Sugriva is the one with the crown over there. And at the hearing of Ramchandra's story, they are providing him with the ornaments that Sita threw over the side of the chariot. Although in Ramayana, the chariot was broken, so I don't know how she threw it over the side of the chariot because it was already broken. But she had ornaments in a cloth, and while flying over Rishamukh mountain, she tossed the ornaments in the cloth, and they captured them. When Ramachandra asked, do you recognize? He said, I only recognize the ankle ornaments because I've never looked above Sita's feet. We heard this already about Dvidvida. He gave bad advice to Sugriva. Don't pay so much attention to the other one, Lakshman. Pay attention to Ram. Pay attention to the Supreme Lord, not to the representative of the Supreme Lord. He's the important one. The other one is not so important. That's what we heard. So it was neglect and disrespect of Lakshman. And then we also heard there was a way to correct that mistake. The correction of the mistake of Sugriva was that he was being beaten badly the first time, but when Lakshman was advised to give a garland so I could identify which one of you, because you look so much alike, he had to lean over taking the garland from Lakshman. Now, I don't know if you ever thought of this, but it wasn't just a garland. It was vines. And when two powerful fighters are fighting, what's a garland of vines going to do? It's going to break apart. Could never figure it out. But so it wasn't just so they could tell them apart. It was so they could tell them apart. But so he could be forgiven. Later on, there's this same principle. Lakshman constantly by the side of Ramachandra with total submission to him in his guru role, carrying out his order simply as the servant. But as we already heard, Ram acknowledged that his service was not just the subordinate servant, it was protective kind of service, like a father to a son, caring for him. Then comes the demise of Lakshman. You know this demise of Lakshman. One Brahmin came, and very mysterious Brahmin, and said, I have something very confidential to tell you, and it has to be done in a private place where no one can come. And if someone comes, then you'll have to kill them. Ram agreed. And as it turns out, that Brahman was death personified. Death personified said, Brahma has sent me to come here and inform you that the time for your earthly pastimes is drawing to a close. You have achieved all that you desired to achieve. You may now return to your own eternal abode. So this is a confidential discussion. No one should hear the words that pass between us. If anyone should interrupt us, they must be killed by you. Death personified instead of a Brahmana. And a circumstance came that was Durvas Muni wanted to see Ram. And Lakshman was preventing Durvas Muni to see Ram because there was his order. Durvas Muni went out of control. I will not be kept waiting. Go at once and inform Ram of my presence. Otherwise, I shall curse you, your brothers, this territory, and all your descendants. Indeed, my anger is already difficult to contain. He has a big reputation for getting ticked off. People have big problems. And so Lakshman went, informed him. Durvasa Muni is waiting. He's losing his temper. And because Ram had made this pledge, Lakshman is reminding him of the pledge. I must now die, dear brother, for that was the promise you made to death. Punish me in accord with your word to that deity. Problem, right? How can he destroy his dear friend Lakshman? Ram looked at Lakshman. I leave you, O son of Sumitra. Let virtue not suffer. Desertion and slaying are considered equal according to the wise. Therefore, do I abandon you today. Yikes. Now, we already heard Hanuman say, not possible. As sun and sunshine are inseparable, Sita is inseparable from Ram, Lakshman is inseparable from Ram. It's not possible for Ram to leave Lakshman, but there was a pastime where he left Lakshman. At the bank of the Sarayu, Lakshman suspended his breathing and entered a deep trance. As he sat absorbed in thought of Ram, he departed for the spiritual realm. Thus ends Lakshman in Valmiki Ramayana. The commentary says, Ram knew he was going to depart, which meant that Lakshman's time to depart was also due. So better that he departs first, because how will be able to bear separation from me? So better he departs first. Part of a Leela, but to uphold virtue, but part of the Leela for their pastimes to begin, and now their pastimes to end. So here we go. We're nearing conclusion of this evening's discussion. Commentary. Lakshman represents Adiguru throughout the Ramayana, expressing intensively as the absolute order carrier of Sri Ram without questioning. And so there's the servitude, there's the Sakya, and sometimes, just like when they were sitting together, Lakshman is advising Ram, don't become weak at heart. You're a hero, you're a great soul. So it has some back and forth conversation, but it's not the same, but it's similar to Vrindavan or Krishna's pastimes, where there's an intimacy that supersedes the Aishvarya. Should I do that one again? The realm of Ramachandra is in Haridham, is in the spiritual realm of Vaikuntha. And Ayodhya, amongst the Vaikuntha planets, is very special. It's the topmost. Why? Because of the intimacy of relationships. We mentioned this. In Vaikuntha, does Narayan have a father? Does Narayan have brothers? And there was also a sister. Kaushalya had a daughter. So that doesn't go on in Vaikuntha. So there's in those relationships, there's love. There's exchange that has an intimacy beyond Aishvarya. So similarly, what we just I'm trying to describe is sometimes with Lakshmana, although his mood is completely subservient to Ram, sometimes there's some back and forth due to intimacy, much like sometimes in Vrindavan. The cowherd boys don't see Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They wrestle with him. There's this, one of my godbrothers, Kirti Dev, used to say this like 50 times, he, with his head rolling back and laughing. Sri Dham would say, "Oh, what kind of big man are you? You always lose in the wrestling match. Let me get on your shoulders. You got to carry me." So talking in a haughty, friendly, of course, joking way, where he's an equal. Certainly distinct from the queens, there's the residents, the gopis. And their intimacy in talking back with Krishna, of course, there's varieties of gopis. But many of the gopis, particularly in Radharani's group, Yuta, they talk back to Krishna all the time. And they call him a debauchee, and they call him a liar, and they call him this, and they call him that, and it's it's disrespectful. But it's with a loving mood. It's not with anything else but a loving mood. It gives Krishna pleasure. Now, when someone else does like that, like the washerman spoke like that to Krishna, he didn't give Krishna pleasure because it wasn't coming from a place of love. So, same words, different mood. One is harsh, and the other is loving. So sometimes between Lakshman and Ram, Lakshman always seeing Ram as his master, the intimacy would become very, very strong. there's a pastime with I'm pausing because I don't want to. There's a pastime with Radha and her brother, where Radha and her brother's name, Radharani had a brother. Did you know that? Radharani had a brother. What's our young scholar's friend over here? What's Radharani's brother's name? Sridham. Sridham. That's right. Sridham. So one time, Radharani and Sridham got in a little dispute, like a war with words. And without all the detail, she cursed Sridham. He would become a demon. And he became Shankachuda. This is a detail. And he cursed his sister. You're so offensive. For 100 years, you're going to be separated from your beloved Krishna. Now, that's not just banter where they're kind of chiding one another back and forth, but it's a lila because Sridham has simply love for Krishna and love for Radha. But it's a lila for some purpose. So these things get really mysterious. Like, really mysterious. One thing we should always be clear about, that loving exchanges on the platform of pure consciousness are not always in the Aishvarya mood. Sometimes in the Madhurya mood, and the Madhurya mood eclipses the Aishvarya mood. A little example of this, it's not exactly this, but we had some discussion in the midday session about sorrow. And the mood of sorrow permeates from the very first when Valmiki saw the hunter shoot the krancha bird, and he spoke with anger and cursed the hunter. And then he was shocked at himself. So anyway, there's sorrow or shoka, great despair, from the very get-go, and then again, and then again, and then again. And what Rupa Goswami describes is, you should have received that document. Did you receive the document? Okay, that's good. The nice picture of Lord Chaitanya, and he's crying with sorrow. But it's love. So, the science of it is, there's mukhya bhav and there's gona bhav. What's that? There's primary and there's secondary. And secondary rasas appear to eclipse the primary rasa, and then they fade because the primary rasa is primary. But they come momentarily or for a short while, for some time, due to some stimulation, udipan, and it stimulates that emotion that seems to eclipse the primary emotion or sthai bhav, and then it fades. And it can only exist when there's sthai bhav, when there's a primary relationship of love. And then one can experience these other secondary emotions. There's more, but as you know, Rupa Goswami is very particular, and it's a science of rasa, of taste in one's relationship with the Supreme Person. It exists in Ramayana as well. There's many examples right in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu of events in Ramayana that display also different rasas, primary and secondary rasas. So if you don't know Rupa Goswami's teachings, you're going to see events with the eyes of material conception of what's going on. And this doesn't look right. Or that doesn't, Krishna's Leela same. And that, but that's the wrong lens to look at. One's not qualified to properly look at the absolute truth personality of Godhead and his loving dealings if one doesn't have affinity for the personality of Godhead with sufficient training and qualification to understand how loving exchanges are variegated, primary and secondary. So the primary rasa of Lakshman is service. With Hanuman, there's no mixture, it's just service. And with Lakshman, there's another kind of intimacy. He's a brother. He treats Ram like a father might treat a son, and therefore sometimes the father can chide or give correction to the son. There's a different type of primary rasa within Lakshman, but all of it is resting upon the mood of service, for sure. And that's what it says here on the screen. The prominent mood is to be an order carrier for the pleasure of Sri Ram. This includes this odd and devastating episode in how Lakshman exits his earthly pastimes. Here's a little document that goes a little bit further into this. Sheshatvam. We'll hear some more in the midday session tomorrow in relation to Shatrughna, but Sheshatvam is the quality of Lakshmana, particularly towards Ramachandra. But Sheshatvam has two divisions. One is towards the Supreme Lord, and the other is towards the Lord's devotee. Lakshmana is of the first kind, Bhagavat Sheshatvam. Shatrughna is the second kind, Bhagavata Sheshatvam. That is, Shatrughna had this very profound affection for Bharata, as Lakshman had very profound affection for Ramachandra. And here's another one of these Tvam words. Paratantriam was exhibited by Bharata. Paratantriam means complete dependence on the higher authority. Bharata was the emblem of Paratantriam towards Ramachandra. So the mood of Lakshman and the mood of Bharata were similar but different. And Dasyatvam, that's Shatrughna as a devotee of Bharata. So this is the last slide. There's a document that you should have received, and you can read it over to get a little more picture of what this is all about. So I'm ending, and just a little wrap up. When we began the morning class, late midday class, there's teachings or principles that one may know about from the studies of Shrutis. And then the Smritis, which includes the Puranas and Itihasas, they're histories that this is what it looks like. The ideal king, or something, or something, or something. It illustrates the characteristics of something that's talked about in Shrutis. Here's what it looks like. So they're principles woven into the history of Ramayana that our acharyas, knowing the principles of Scripture, they can shine light or illuminate some detail and some detail, and this detail fits together with that detail, and that's the puzzle piece. And you put the puzzle piece together, you get the whole big puzzle. And it's a big adventure. And from my experience, there's practically no end to the adventure. Especially when you have a bad memory like I have. You read something and the little light goes on, and then after a while, I don't remember what I heard. So I have to hear it again and again. Therefore, Shravanam Kirtanam regularly, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Nityam, regularly hearing the messages of the personality of Godhead. And then slowly the forgetfulness goes away and the remembrance takes its place. And the prominence of a relationship becomes one's life. That's the Bhagavad Dharma path. That's what we're supposed to be doing. And now it's not that we're not supposed to be doing your homework at school or your work in the office or your career development, or it's not that we're not supposed to do those things, but we're supposed to become purified by hearing and chanting, so those things take on some spiritual effect. The other kids in the school or the other workers in the workplace become infected by the bhakti that you're carrying, and you don't become infected by their modes of nature. We can navigate our way through complex life in modern time by being protected by Bhagavad Dharma and the Bhagavad Bhakti that arises from Bhagavad Dharma. And that's a whole topic. It's a nice topic. So let's see if there's some discussion.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for nice class. When I was hearing about Shurpanaka, she offended a lot, all three, including Sita Maharani, and her intention was quite ugly.
Yes.
But still Krishna fulfill his desire in next lifetime. Looks like normal sadhaka, he has to put lots of effort to get Krishna's mercy, but she got like anything like this only.
You don't think, the premise is mistaken. Don't think that you won't get mercy. The very fact that you're engaged in sadhana is in itself mercy. And it can carry you to places that's, the darkness. I won't, one devotee went back to India, and they stayed with their family members for 2-3 weeks. And when they came back, they reported, confidentially, they're so unfortunate. They don't have a clue. And my life would have been like that too. Not a clue, and being tossed by the waves of the material energy, and completely clueless, completely rudderless, completely misguided, bewildered, with emotions that are going all over the place. Now, it's the same world that you and I live in, that they live in, but there's some purification. There's a center. So it's not that it amounts to nothing. Not that you're saying it amounts to nothing, but the Supreme Lord may give his kindness to someone, and he's not bound by your yardsticks. It should, if she gets that, I should get something better, or at least equal. It's not like that. Why Ramachandra gave his mercy to Shurpanakha the way that he gave to Shurpanakha? She had an important role to play in Ramayana. She played her role very well. She was attracted to Ramachandra. May you become so attracted to the Supreme Lord as she was. And then maybe you become Kubja. I was just reading today from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu on this same section where the rishis in Dandak forest, they had an attraction for Ramachandra in conjugal love. Now, we won't talk too much about what is that, the implication in our modern, but the attraction is not, male to male. It's to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They're very elevated. And they had an attraction in conjugal mood. They didn't say anything. Ramachandra didn't say anything about their attraction, according to this section of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. But he acknowledged their attraction. And sure enough, they became gopis in their next life in Vrindavan. And they got the opportunity to associate with him in that way. So it's the attraction for the personality of Godhead. And it, can be warped, like Shurpanakha was warped. Lusty, like crazy. Completely on the material platform. But attracted. Putana, etc. So there's principles. And if we're not elevated persons, we can't discern those principles so well. But an elevated person understands principle, and then the example follows the principle. There's reciprocation. So don't think there's not. So if you want that kind of reciprocation, then focus on the principle of becoming so attached to achieving the shelter of the holy name and service to your deity, or service to the Bhagavatam, or service to the Vaishnavas, that everything else diminishes in its importance.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. My question is, today's topic was Lakshmana as a guru, basically. So my question is here, when we are saying that Lakshmana as a guru, he is doing the service. The service, as part of the service he is doing, he came in that avatar to perform the guru. Or
part of his service is to do what? There's some noise and it's a little hard to hear. Go ahead. Try it again.
Yeah. So as a part of the Siksha, when he came as a guru, so service was his first principle to do the teachings in that form, or he has another teaching while he came as a guru in the form of Lakshmana.
I'm not sure what you're asking. Are you asking, did he speak scripture to others?
Yeah, exactly. That's my question. In the form of Lakshman, he didn't speak any
I don't know of any description that he sat down and gave a Puranic or other Shastra class as we normally now think of guru.
Yeah.
But it's rather the principle was exclusive service to and giving to others. So he gave to others in so many ways. He knew scripture. Here's a nice example. When he went to Sugriva to chastise Sugriva for being negligent, he let him have it. Like, and on the authority of scripture, not the authority of, he's my master and shame on you because you made a pledge to him and you neglected your pledge. He spoke scripture, but not from a Vyasa-san. He's a Kshatriya, who's doing his Kshatriya-like duty. He got his bow and arrow, and he's doing another guru-like function from that position. But he knew the scripture.
So is this to be precisely to be said guru is the right word to the Lakshman?
Well, it's how our acharyas speak of him, so I'm comfortable with that. The model of guru may, in our modern context, look a little different, but the principle is the same principle.
All right.
I mean, here's an example that comes to mind. Prabhupada's father a Brahmana? He was a Vaishya. His father was a businessman.
Correct.
Prabhupada writes in Chaitanya Charitamrita that his family was from the line that came from the gold merchants. No, who's the person who is the gold merchant? I forget right now. But no, the business person. But he was Paka Vaishnav. Not Brahmana by birth, but Brahmana by quality. His occupation. So he trained his son the way that he trained his son in Vaishnava principles, worshiping a deity, and may my son give my blessings, inviting sadhus, providing, performing the function of a elevated Vaishnava, though his occupation was different.
Got it.
And a very honest, forthright, not the tricky kind of Vaishya. Very generous. Okay, someone else.
Pranam Maharaj. In this picture, I could see like 2 arms are from Krishna and 2 arms are from Rama. Can you explain about the other 2 if you are aware?
As I get older, my hearing isn't so good.
Oh, yeah. In the picture,
I can hear your voice.
Okay.
But it's just my apology.
In this picture, I could recognize 2 arms are from Rama and 2 arms are from Krishna. I was wondering what are the other 2 arms.
Oh, there's a Danda and a Kamandalu.
Yeah.
That's the other 2.
Is it-
Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Oh. He showed
My
the
ignorance.
6-armed form, and there's the other 2. No,
Thank you.
at this time, his Danda was already broken. But he showed a Danda anyways. He can show 6 arms, he can show a Danda.
Thank you, Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yes.
Krishna Maharaj, I was just wondering what the specific qualities that Balaram showed as a Adi Guru and what those are.
Well, if you want, I'll say a few things, but I invite you to read this section where it discusses it. Adi Leela, chapter 1, in this series of verses starting 44, 45, 46. There's purports that describe the principle. But he is representing Krishna always, both in his mood of service and his revealing the truths about Krishna. Now, when he was in Vrindavan, for example, the cowherd boys didn't know that he was the personality of Godhead. And he didn't blow their mind and say, na 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 na, He was complying with the mood of Vrindavan by his own choosing, as well as by the influence of the internal potency. But he knew who was Krishna, and he was engaging with. Here's an example. Your head is moving, and I'm trying to have eye contact with this young man behind you. Okay, there we go. It's okay. You don't have to cut off your head. When Krishna was caught in the coils of the Kaliya serpent, you know the pastime. So someone went running all the way back to Nandagram and to tell Nanda and Yasoda, help! Krishna's in the coils of the Kaliya serpent, come quickly. Now, how long did it take? They didn't have a horse, they didn't have a car, they didn't have roads, they didn't have a taxi, they didn't. However long it took, that's how long it took. And then they came back, but Balaram was completely not worried because he knew he's all powerful. He's having fun. He's enjoying a pastime. So, but he didn't say it because he didn't want to disturb them. But he's omniscient. So he did the guru function in a different way, abiding with Krishna, assisting Krishna in his pastimes in any way that Krishna wanted, and thereby giving Krishna happiness in a very confidential and intimate way. In that sense, not the same, but similar to his question, sitting on the Vyasasana and giving a Bhagavatam class.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Haribol Maharaj. So my question was that, as we all know that there are three types of bhakti if we do. So there is a guarantee we won't come back to this material world. Like Vishnu Bhakti, Ram Bhakti and Krishna Bhakti. But like sometimes we find that we encounter like staunch Ram Bhakts. And then so like what should be our, like if we want to actually explain them that how Krishna is more Rasik than Ram, and so how we should like tell them that achieving Krishna is more greater than achieving Ram.
Two things. Give the microphone to him. That's the first thing. You can read the section in Chaitanya Charitamrita, the conversation between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Venkatabhatta, who was the chief priest in Sri Rangam. And you read that section, you'll understand how he did it. There was the place of meeting, that is, the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, is completely chaste and faithful to Narayan, and that Lakshmi wanted to join the rasa dance with Krishna. There's no unchastity in her part because Narayan and Krishna are the same. But then she wasn't allowed to enter the rasa dance. Not only that, this is Lord Chaitanya explaining, but she underwent austerities. Lakshmi underwent austerities, and she still couldn't enter the rasa dance. Venkatabhatta, can you explain? He said, no, but I think you can. And so he explained the science of rasa. So stepping back from that exchange, one of the things that is said, generally speaking, about those 4 months in the rainy season, they all, that is Venkatabhatta, his brother, and his son, all became convinced, based upon the science of rasa, which he gave thoroughly to Rupa Goswami. So something that may benefit us is to learn the teachings of Rupa Goswami about rasa, at least, ABC. But therein is the distinction. There's the non-difference, and there's a difference, largely based upon rasa. And I brought it out lightly this evening. Lakshmana is in the first expansion, like Sankarshan is the first expansion of Vasudeva. So Sankarshan is to Vasudeva as Lakshmana is to Ramchandra. So there's a oneness, but there's There's an intimacy also that's not the same as in the Vaikuntha. It's different, similar, but not exactly the same. And the difference has to do with rasa. And that, then comes what's rasa. So then read Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and you'll get a better idea tomorrow than you have today about what rasa is. And how can you, when you meet people that don't have that same understanding, how can you help them? The goal is not conversion or arm twisting or, condescension. The goal is just illuminating, shining light on people that have an interest to understand more about the Supreme Person. And there's all kinds of levels and layers of understanding the Supreme Person. And there are different ways of interacting with those individuals. Just today, just this morning, listening to about a half an hour discussion. Prabhupada's in Paris, August 1973, and he's meeting with a leader of the Rosicrucian order. Rosicrucian is a Christian order. There's a rose in the center of a crucifix. That's Rosicrucian. It's the Bible is their text, but they have a certain idea of what's the goal. Prabhupada kept asking, what's the goal? What's the purpose? And it was, fair to partly cloudy. And Prabhupada decided, for whatever the reason, he was inspired to just dwell on it. Cosmic consciousness. Then what's that? What's the stage of perfection for a Rosicrucian? What's the concept? And it was fair to partly cloudy. And he couldn't give the answer because he didn't have a clear understanding. Anyway, so depends on the situation. Even if someone accepts God, the Supreme Person, and wants to worship God, the Supreme Person, there are ways, depending upon time, place, circumstance, to enter into that discussion. A person means they have form, they have a place, they have relationships, they have qualities. So tell me what you know about all those things. Anyway, so it depends on the situation and how you engage in conversation with somebody about one of the principles is to be respectful, at the same time inspire asking questions, and different ways to inspire asking, being inquisitive. And when there's not clarity, please become clear. Here's a very clear picture. And then, if it's done respectfully and with proper understanding of Scripture, and you're not got a stick in your hand anyway, then humble persuasion is one of the best methods of helping a person go from where they are to the next level. You have something online? You personal, okay.
Maharaj, we saw this time today about how Lakshmana was in a dilemma, that he had to leave because of Sita's kind of blackmailing, and he had to disobey Rama's instructions of not...
Tough spot, huh?
Yeah. So my question is, how do we interpret this pastime? Because it looks like almost Lakshmana disobeyed the Lord's instructions. And I was thinking, even during Bhakti, we have this dilemma kind of situation, Bhakti versus non-Bhakti activity. And how do we deal with that?
Depends. I mean, when Ram came back and discovered that he had left, he grilled him. Why did you leave? There was back and forth. Because if I had stayed, she was threatening to enter fire. So it was a tough choice. Do I just watch her enter into fire, or call her bluff, or disobey? It was a tough call. So just today, this is some little sharing on the question you're asking. Madhavananda, you know who is Madhavananda? Many of you know who is Madhavananda. He's a very nice devotee, Gaur Govinda Maharaj's disciple. And he publishes, he's so regular, publishing a Bindu magazine, a digital, sends it out. The latest one just came in the mail. I read 2 of the articles. One of them was a Muslim king threatened people. If you come with your kunti mala and tilak, I'll kill you. Now, I'm going to China, and you don't wear tilak, and you don't wear kunti mala. And I was told, don't even put a dhoti in your suitcase. And I've been in a police station in China, but I didn't have a dhoti and kunti mala and tilak. So, there's a story where the Muslim leader was defied. And when he saw not only the defiance, here comes someone in my king's court with tilak and kunti mala, but his whole demeanor was so elevated and pure. The king honored him. I mean, he was a cruel guy, but he honored him because he was moved by his purity. So that's a tilak topic. And how much do we disclose to others? Circling back to the format of your question, or the foundation of your question. So much depends on the circumstance. Your circumstance, that the compromises that you have to live with. When you go to the workplace, do you wear tilak? So, I'm not saying that you should. I'm not saying that you shouldn't. Just saying that we're making choices all the time, and we have to navigate our way through the modern world, when what's most important is what's inside than what's outside. And if your demeanor is right, if your character is right, it's more compelling sometimes than what you say. Your achar is more compelling than prachar. No, when you can give the prachar, then do that. But you may have to be thoughtful. Not may have to be, you should be thoughtful when you speak, that doesn't create disturbance with the other person. Okay. Anything else? Oh, ladies in the back. Any enthusiastic ladies want to?
Maharaj, can you develop Bhagavat or Seshatvam that you had and not do that good on Bhagavat Seshatvam development? Like, does that happen? If so, how to develop one bhakti towards Guru? Because that seems very
Bhakti
difficult.
towards
Guru.
Well,
Seems difficult.
it's the hearing and then practical service. Carrying out what you've understood, making it part of your life, an intrinsic part of your life, not a cosmetic part, but an intrinsic, something that goes in, that you live by. It's from the heart platform. It's a relationship that you hear, and what you've understood, you do. You live by it. So you just hear, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Pada Sevanam. It's follow that channel.
Thank you, Mother.
I'll say one other thing and I'll end. The principle of gratitude is very powerful. One can give one's life just on the principle of gratitude, and you grow the principle of gratitude, and it can carry your whole life because you've received something. We discussed it with the Hanuman story. That when, for example, in Brihat Bhagavatamrita, Gopakumar receives his mantra, and he would be his concern was it would be an act of ingratitude if I didn't experience the fullness of the gift that I've been given. Or say it the other way, to appreciate the fullness of the gift that I have been given, I should continue, because it's a principle of gratitude. And ingratitude is not okay. I can't live with that. So it's a personal character trait within you or within each of us in recognizing the gift and giving back. We heard it, Sanatan Dharma. It's a principle to live by. And that's a symptom of a person with character. And I really don't want to be a broken, non-character person. A Kali Yuga casualty. I don't want to do that. It's easy. Just close your eyes and run. Okay, thank you very much, Prabhupada Ki.
Mahaprasade Govinde.